Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this November National Family Caregivers Month webinar. I'm David Russo, the Executive Director of Cheeky Charity, and we're grateful to spend this time with you. Tonight's program is a collaboration between Natera, Cheeky Charity, and Triage Cancer. Our focus is simple. We want to support the caregivers who show up every day for people they love. Whether you're caring for a partner, family member, friend, or someone in your community, your role is essential and deserves care and recognition. We're joined tonight by three wonderful panelists who will be sharing their experiences throughout the conversation. At first, I'd like to invite each of them to introduce themselves briefly so you can get to know who's with us and the perspectives they bring. How about Mary? Can we start with you?
Yeah. You go first.
You go first.
Oh, yeah.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
So I'm Mary. We live in Texas. John is retired military. And I'll let him tell his kind of story and how I kind of got involved a little. So.
Got involved. All right. My name is John Munoz. After high school, I joined the Marine Corps. My MOS was infantry, so obviously I got deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, I stepped on an IED and I had my leg blown off, a couple other body parts and other injuries. And I would say that the physical part is probably has been the easiest for me. The mental side is defeating me, basically. So I'm very thankful for Mary being my caregiver because she does so much for me. I feel like sometimes my memory just goes. So yeah, the mental part is my biggest issue, and Mary is obviously my wife, but my caregiver. And that's my story somewhat.
So I stepped in as a caregiver probably about 10 years ago. When we kind of met, things were kind of all over. You see the basic injuries, but you don't think about everything else where it comes from mental, but all the other injuries that come with it. We deal daily with, I guess, gastro issues constantly. I think that's like our biggest thing of being diagnosed, got blown up, things happen in there. You don't know if it's military related from an ID or if it's cancer related or this or that. So going through multiple testing. I spend a lot of time going through, can you take this medication? Will reflect on this, his mental health, will interact with other things that he's doing. I am fortunate enough that I found myself a very great support group. I go once a year with the caregiver events and meet with other caregivers. We give each other resources, from doctors to nurses to everything, and just kind of go through our scenarios. And we find that those are the best scenarios that I've gotten, like best help that I've gotten are those support groups. So I'm really excited for this webinar to provide information to everyone, and all the different stories that you're going to hear today.
Thank you, too. I guess move on to Kyle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle. This is Eddy, my caregiver and my husband of almost 8 years. And my story is in 2024, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. I had my world turned upside down completely. And I went from full throttle to I'm in the back seat now. And without my caregiver being able to step in and really, I guess, just be my rock. And sometimes, yeah, the marriage has to be on hold because I'm fighting for my life and I'm in between doctor's appointments. It's a full-time job. Actually, cancer is a full-time job plus a part-time job and then another part-time volunteer work. It's a full load. So anybody that says you can still work and handle this caseload, for those that do it, my hat's off to you. But it's really completely changed my life around. And I know that not only did it change my life completely, it's changed Eddy's, and him having to completely switch roles into somebody that he really wasn't comfortable being is a caregiver.
Yeah. Well, I'm Eddy, and I'm
I'm here. I just want to share with you guys how it's been all this journey. So nobody prepared you for this, right? Like this is not something that you can read. This is not something that you can go to ChatGPT and ask what to do. I guess you have to like be learning like every single day. You're learning first of all to control your emotions and feelings, because yet if you are taking care of somebody that you just met or is a friend, at the end of the day you go home and then you can rest. When you're the caregiver of somebody that you live with, that you share your life with, it becomes part of you too. So as he says, it's a full-time job. You have your full-time job that you have to take care of. And I work in customer service, and I also travel a lot. So I have to be on my 100% all the time. And at the same time, when I'm home, it's a full-time job too, because I have to make sure that when I'm not home, Kyle has everything he needs, from food, medication. Like if he needs to go to an appointment, I have to set up my work around his appointments, because I don't know if I'm gonna feel good and nobody tell you these things. And you know what? Like sometimes he'll feel and he'll tell you how scared he is. You have to be there. You have to not pretend that you are broken. You are broken and you have to share it. You have to normalize it, how you feel. And sometimes, like it was really hard for me trying to find a group, because Kyle and I, we share the same type of job. So we have a lot of friends in common. So it's a constant sharing. How's he doing? How's he doing? And text over text, sometimes over 100 texts. How's he doing? And then so many times you're like, I just don't want to say this anymore. I don't want to speak about it anymore. This is my life. I go through this. And, like I don't want to feel guilty telling people not to ask me. It's just how you feel, and you have to learn how to go through it. So, like I guess that we just have to like be prepared for these things.
Thank you guys. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, as all that we're going to dig a lot into in shortly. So Kristin, if you can introduce yourselves real quick.
Sure. Thanks, David.
Mhm.
And can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kristin Gunderson, and I'm a genetic counselor by training. And I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin with my family. And you'll hear from my caregiver, one of many caregivers, but I need to shout out one important caregiver, my mom, tonight. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about her and I's experience and being diagnosed with cancer. And so, from my patient story, as a 37-year-old, I was initially diagnosed with a myxoid liposarcoma at the age of 35. And if it sounds like a mouthful, it is. So, for those of you that don't know what a myxoid is, it's a rare and often aggressive soft tissue sarcoma. And that was in my left thigh. So, in thinking about, where our stories have led us to here today, my story from the diagnosis standpoint, I remember sitting in the car with my husband and we were driving home, and it was right after my daughter's first birthday, and thinking, wow, like we are really nailing this whole parenthood thing. It was chaotic and it was scary, but we were crushing it. And then I don't know, it feels very vivid to me, but I placed my hand on my leg. And that's when I felt the lump. And I went in and I talked to my mom, who is a nurse by training, and said, oh, it's a lipoma. We have a family history of it. And being a genetic counselor, I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I was diagnosed on the ultrasound table with sarcoma. And so I think, given my background, in addition to being an oncology genetic counselor, I wanted to ask the questions. And I think what I wanted to talk to you tonight about, just my experience and kind of thinking about what I'm adding and contributing to the conversation, is thinking more about things to say, like give yourself a little bit of grace. I really wanted to think about my cancer diagnosis as if I was the only one, mainly because one of my diagnoses is that it was incredibly rare. And so it was difficult for me to think outside of the box and say, oh no, it doesn't take a village, because I'm here and I'm doing this by myself. And one thing I want to be able to reiterate tonight, and I think that you're going to hear this from all of the panelists, is that when you're going through cancer or any type of caregiving experience, it does take a village. And when we think about village, and I'm really going to be wanting to lean on my mom for a lot of this part of the conversation, but when we think about taking a village, like I was very lucky. I had a very strong family and friends support network that kind of came around us in a very tight bubble and supported my husband and I. But I know that there are a lot of families and patients that don't necessarily have that. And so, in thinking about our experiences tonight, I hope that you can take away with building up that village just like we did, and that you actually aren't alone in that experience. And I am ashamed as a parent and as a patient to say that I did think I was alone in that, and truly no one is alone. And so hopefully we'll be able to help build that up a little bit. I think cancer in general was a deeply humbling experience. And I was just so incredibly lucky to be able to have a very strong caregiver like my mom. I also want to do a shout out to my partner and husband, Troy, but who is watching our daughter tonight, and he is an equally important part of this journey. But I think that my mom here has really seen me kind of through the highs and lows, which we'll kind of talk about more tonight. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Okay, that's great. I'm Jan. I am a nurse case manager by training, and I've worked in hospital case management for 20 years. And prior to that, I was a home health nurse and I was a home hospice nurse. And so I really got to know the true meaning of coming to where people are at, be that in their patient room or be that in um, their home. So when my daughter told me that she had this diagnosis, I first was initially shocked. I was freaked out, and as a mother, it was a gut punch. And but I thought, you know what? I am a caregiver, and I'm a case manager. And so what I did was kind of looked around and said, I got to get a team going here. I have to see who our caregiver team is going to be, and that is pulling people together. I initially thought that I could do it all by myself, but I have to come up with a safe plan for my daughter, her husband, and our 1-year-old granddaughter. There was a lot of things that needed to be taken care of in the midst of getting transported to Milwaukee from Madison for radiation, and then kind of checking out the home situation after surgery. So that was my forte, is kind of looking at a home situation and seeing what needed to be done. So it took it. I pulled in my friends. I asked a lot of people for help, and my friends came through. So that's where I'm going with this. So
Ooh, thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing. And I'm super excited to dig more into each of your stories shortly. Um, and I'm excited, without further ado, to bring in Monica, who I'll let you introduce yourself and feel free to share your screen and get started.
Well, thank you so much. It is definitely hard to follow all of those stories, but I will start by saying that my name is Monica Bryant. I'm a cancer rights attorney and co-founder and chief mission officer of an organization called Triage Cancer. And for those of you who might not be familiar, Triage Cancer is a national nonprofit that provides free education on all of the legal and practical issues that arise after a cancer diagnosis. And we do that in a lot of different ways. And I only have 20 minutes to present to you today. So I'm going to be pointing you to some places where you can get some additional information after tonight about the topics we're going to talk about today, but then also about some other topics. Because oftentimes when I tell someone I'm a cancer rights attorney, I usually get sort of a blank stare back, or the question that's like, well, what's legal about cancer? And the answer is actually almost everything. From what medications someone has access to what health insurance is required to cover, to what your rights are to work through treatment or take time off, to how do you replace lost income, to how do you document your wishes around medical care and finances. And so many times people don't think of these types of issues as legal issues, but they are in fact all rooted in the law. The other thing about it is that these legal issues also tend to be the pieces that contribute to the financial hardship that so many people experience after a cancer diagnosis. So today I was asked to really focus in on specifically the concept of estate planning and why it's so important for not just the person who's diagnosed, but for caregivers and really the entire sort of caregiving village unit that we've already heard a lot about today. Now, estate planning is an umbrella term that really talks about a process to make sure that your wishes around what you want to have happen to your property, but then also what do you want with respect to your healthcare and your finances and caring for your loved ones if you're ever in a position where you can't express those wishes for yourself. Now, if you are sitting here thinking, I haven't planned ahead and I don't have an estate plan, you are absolutely not alone. We have tons of very famous examples of people who passed away without planning their estate. And in fact, less than a quarter of Americans have the most basic document that creates an estate plan. And so this is certainly not to shame or disparage anyone who hasn't planned, but really, if you haven't planned, it's to help you get started. And if you already have planned, hopefully there's some pieces in here that maybe you haven't thought about that you can sort of add to your plan. Now, my team laughs at me because I say talking about estate planning is one of my most favorite topics to talk to people about, even though it can be a really hard thing to do. Because what we are ultimately talking about is putting a plan in place for a time when something terrible has likely happened and you can't express your wishes, or you have passed away. And most of us don't really want to be thinking about those things. That being said, there is one thing that is unequivocally true for each and every one of us. And that is, at some point, we are all going to pass away. And so creating an estate plan and thinking through your wishes, it's important for a lot of reasons. Certainly making sure what you want to have happen happens. There's some financial benefits to it. But believe it or not, I think the most important reason that people should plan their estate is because it is the single most significant act of love that you can do to protect the people you care about. Because you are planning ahead and you are thinking through the hard decisions and you are putting pen to paper, it means that your loved ones, at a time when they are under a tremendous amount of stress and pressure, don't have to try to figure out what it is you want to have happen. So I look at this as a really loving thing that we can all do for the people that we care about in our lives. And if none of those things resonate with you as a reason to create your estate plan, I will tell you, I'm a very type A human being. I like to make sure that, everything is in order and in place. And I look at estate planning as a way for me to exert my control one final time, even after I've passed away. Estate planning can be hard to talk about, even harder once there is a serious medical diagnosis like cancer. And frankly, this should never be an end-of-life conversation. This should be the moment you turn 18 and you're a legal adult, this is something that we should all be doing. But it is hard. Where do we start? And it does require getting organized. And so we have a checklist to getting organized that can be downloaded, and it sort of gives you some ideas of things that you can start to pull together to be able to effectively create your estate plan. And then I think you can start with these really big picture questions. What do you want to have happen to the things that you own when you pass away? Are there people you're legally responsible for, like minor children, for example? Are there people or causes, institutions that you want to support, even though you're not legally required to do so? And if you're ever in a position where you are still alive, but you're unable to make medical or financial decisions, who would you want to step into that role? And starting with those big picture questions, and generally they're not quick answers, I think this is a great place where you can sort of start journaling and thinking about the answers to these questions. And once you've narrowed down some of the answers, then you have to figure out which actual documents you want to put into place. And I think there are 3 documents that everyone over the age of 18 should have. The first is the power of attorney for financial affairs. This is a document where you name a person to conduct financial affairs on your behalf. You can do this in 2 ways. You can create it and it's standing, which means that the moment you sign that document, that agent or person that you've named can step in to help you with your finances. And I think that this is a place where actually it can be really useful for caregivers to have this type of document, because then they can make phone calls to the insurance companies and handle appeals and sign people up for benefits on behalf of their loved one. But if that's not needed at this moment, you can also create it today, and it would be springing, which means it wouldn't go into effect unless you were in a position where you couldn't make these decisions by yourself. Powers of attorney for financial affairs are only valid while someone is alive. Once they pass away, they are no longer valid. So it can't be used as a substitute for a will. So just some things that a power of attorney could do: they could pay bills, they could withdraw or deposit into a bank account, they can hire attorneys or oversee insurance. So it can be very helpful, again, as a caregiver to have something like this in place. Another document that can be incredibly helpful for caregivers, particularly if they are stepping into the role of helping with some of the medical components of caregiving, is a release form to access medical records. These are called different things in different states, but basically it's a way for you to say, yes, this person can have access to my medical information. Now, outside of finances and medical information, there may come a time where you are unable to express your wishes around your medical care. And in that case, there are a couple different documents that you could have in place to make sure that you have outlined your wishes. Similar to a power of attorney for financial affairs, there's a power of attorney for healthcare. And it's same concept. You're naming someone to make medical decisions on your behalf. Always helpful to have more than one person in case the first person isn't available. Never name co-agents, because if the co-agents disagree, that causes problems. But you can always have alternate agents in order. Lots of different things that an agent could do. This can be very broad. It could be very narrow. Almost anyone can be your agent, but just because anyone can be your agent doesn't mean they should be. Lots of times I will see married couples or people in long-term partnerships default to their partner or their spouse, which may or may not be a good choice. We are talking about a time when the person they theoretically love more than anyone else in the world is going through something really horrible. And are they going to be in the right mental space to be making these decisions? I will also say, not everyone is cut out to be an agent. And I tell this story all the time. My husband, love him dearly. He is a whiz with money. I would have no problem naming him as my financial power of attorney. He also calls every pill he takes, whether it's a vitamin or a narcotic, he calls it an aspirin. He is not the person that I would like to be making medical decisions on my behalf, right? And so it's just an example of, you could certainly have the same person be agents for financial affairs and medical, but it doesn't have to be. And it may not be best suited to be. And so you have some choices around that. Now, in addition to a power of attorney for healthcare, there's something called a living will. Terrible name, very confusing. I think the better name is instructions for healthcare. And this is where you get to write down what you would or wouldn't want with respect to your medical care. So certainly it could be kind of big things like, yes, make sure I'm getting artificial hydration and nutrition and blood transfusions. But it could also be around comfort care. For example, I think with modern medicine, there is no reason that I should be in pain. So my instructions for healthcare say, please make sure my pain management is adequate. But it could also be about where you want treatment. So I only want to get care at home, or no, I would like to be transferred to the hospital or, sent to a long-term care facility. So this is where you can write down your instructions. Now, you could just name an agent, or you could just have your instructions for healthcare. But when you do both together, that's really what we call an advanced healthcare directive. And doing both together is, in fact, one of the most protective things you can do. And here's why. If you just name an agent, your agent is sort of left to guess what you would or wouldn't want. If you just have your instructions for healthcare, there may come a time when something comes up that you didn't address in your instructions for healthcare. So by having both, the instructions for healthcare give your agent some guidance as to what you would or wouldn't want, but then the agent has the ability to step in if needed. So having the two together, I think, is the most productive. So those are two of the three documents: your power of attorney for financial affairs and your advanced healthcare directive. There are some things that you can do, I think, that are really practical in this space. So if you have a smartphone, like an iPhone or an Android, there is an ability to set up emergency contact information, and first responders are generally trained to be able to access this information. So you can put in medications and allergies. You can also list who your powers of attorneys are, so they could be contacted in an emergency. You can also list the existence of the advanced healthcare directive so that first responders know to be asking for that document. But switching gears into sort of how do you plan ahead for a situation where you may pass away? And it does require taking some inventory of what you actually own. One thing I want to say here is don't just think about the things that have monetary value. Of course, those are important to put into your estate plan, but there are many things that we might own that have immense sentimental value. But if we went to go sell it, it really wouldn't amount for much. But these sentimental things that you might want to pass down to friends, family, loved ones are things that you can include in your will, which is the third document that I think everyone over the age of 18 should have. So it's a legal document where we're going to deal with most of our property and assets, and it's also where we're going to name guardians for minor children. There are different types of wills. Most states have what's called a statutory will, which is sort of a fill-in-the-blank situation. There are lots of online services, both free and some have a charge. And then, of course, you can have a will prepared by a lawyer. Most people who have relatively simple estates, so maybe they only own one piece of property, their family isn't overly complicated, don't need a will prepared by a lawyer. And I think that's often the barrier for a lot of people. They think they have to find a lawyer or pay for a lawyer to create an estate plan, and that's not true. In order to create a legal will, you do have to understand how to do that in your state, because there are some differences from state to state. We have a chart of state laws on our website that shows you every single state and the rules to create it in your state. But when you're creating a will, there are some big picture decisions to make, like who are the beneficiaries? Who's going to get the things? Who's going to act as a guardian if you have a minor child or a dependent? And then finally, who's going to be the executor? So who's going to be the person that actually takes the will to court and handles distributing all of the property? In addition to people saying, well, I can't create a will because I can't find a lawyer, the second reason people don't create wills is they think they can't change them. And that's not the case at all. You can change them as often as you would like. You just have to make sure that you're doing it properly. So you can't just cross out things and write in margins. You do have to create it in a legal way, which is through this codicil, which basically just means it has to be executed the same way the will was in your state. Why do I think it is so important for everyone to have a will? Because if you don't have a will, you lose all control as to what happens. Because every state has what's called an intestate succession law, which basically means it's the order in which property gets distributed. So if you don't have a will and you have not spoken to your sibling in 25 years, but they're the next closest relative, sibling gets everything. So you lose all control whatsoever as to what happens to your property. There are some other things to think about when you're creating an estate plan. So for veterans, you might have added benefits through the VA. Some other professions have benefits. Some people will actually plan their funeral, which again, I think is a hard thing to think about, but a very loving thing to do because it can be hard for your loved ones who are grieving to then also have to deal with all of the logistics pieces. And then over the years, we've had to start talking about these pieces because it's really become so entrenched in our lives. But if you have a phone and all of your accounts are multi-factor authorizations to your phone and no one knows how to get into your phone, that causes problems if you pass away in terms of resetting passwords and getting into bank accounts and whatnot. And so there are some strategies about how you can go in and set up access to phones and your social media should you pass away. The same is true for pets. Many of us have furry, feathered friends that are really family. And so thinking about how we plan ahead for them as well is important. And we have a quick guide that outlines things to think about in that space. And then I think that, once you create the plan, you have to be really practical about it. So thinking about where are you going to keep all of the documents? The number of people I have spoken to over the years who are like, it's in my safety deposit box in the bank, and I'm the only person that can access it. That's a bad plan. Everyone who's involved in your estate planning needs to be able to have access. So the executors, the agents, the guardians need to be able to access those documents. So how can you do that? Certainly you can make photocopies of it. The only reason I think that's challenging is if you do make changes, you have to remember who has all the photocopies and get all those back and then give out new ones. I think using technology here is really helpful. So free Google Drive. You put everything in the Google Drive, you share the link with everyone who's involved, wherever they are in the world, as long as they have internet access, they can access those documents. There are paid services that you can use as well, but I don't think it needs to be overly complicated. The other benefit to that is as you make changes, it's one place where you take down the old documents and you upload the new documents. So creating an estate plan is definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. I think you have to be very thoughtful about what pieces you need and make sense for you and your loved ones. It's also not a one-time chore. It really is something that should be reviewed periodically. People often ask me, well, how often should I review my estate plan? And I think that depends. I think anytime there's a change in your family, so people are born or pass away or married or divorced, that's a good time to review the estate plan. Anytime there's changes in your assets or property, you've sold your house, that might be a good time to revisit your estate plan. But then also changes in wishes. I know personally, my wishes now as a mother of two are very different than they were when I was 20 and I only had myself to think about. So that can also be a good time. Birthday milestones might be a good time to review your estate plan. And again, this shouldn't happen in a vacuum. Everyone who's involved should not only know where the documents are, but what's included in them, and having conversations about your wishes and why maybe you've put certain instructions in can really help, not just with the practical pieces of making sure that your wishes are carried out, but also with the emotional pieces. So understanding if you have chosen that you don't want to have continued life-sustaining treatments, the why behind that. That really can help. We know from loved ones that helps with their mental health and their ability to cope with hard pieces of this. So I know that my time is up and that was an incredibly quick overview, but I will just point you to triagecancer.org. Under our resources by topics page, we have a whole hub on estate planning that has lots of very practical tools to help you get started and hopefully give you some things to think about. We also have a 50 state-specific estate planning toolkit. And so in this toolkit, it's broken up into 3 parts. The first part is general information about all the various documents. Part 2 is the specifics about how to create those documents in your state. And then Part 3 is if there are any forms that exist in your state. We also have a partnership with a service called Good Trust, which is an online service that walks you through the process of creating a will, a trust, and your directives. There is a fee for this, but if you use this QR code, there is an ability to save $25. So this, I think, I have personally used it and I found it very helpful. Now, I mentioned almost everything is rooted in the law when it comes to cancer. And so if you are interested in learning about any of these other topics, by all means, please visit our website and attend our events. We also have a podcast that we put out twice a month. And in fact, our latest episode was all about estate planning and good trust. So if you'd like to hear more about that. We also do a monthly webinar series, totally free to attend. Anyone is welcome. All you have to do is register and then join us. If you aren't able to join us live, we do record them and they are on different topics every month. And then the last thing I will say, and I promise I will stop talking, is if you have questions after today, or if things come up, I know our panelists are going to talk about many of the issues that we talk to people about. We have a legal and financial navigation program that is totally free to use. All you have to do is fill out a form on our website, let us know a little bit about your questions. Then you'll get a link in your email where you can schedule a call with us. We get on the phone and we try to answer your questions. So just know that this is here for you as a resource moving forward as you are navigating all of these issues. So with that, I will stop sharing and say thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. As incredible. I can't thank you enough for sharing all this information. For everybody on the call, this is recorded, so don't worry if you weren't able to jot down links and whatnot. We're going to send a recording of this webinar along with we'll aggregate all of the links for Triage Cancer that were in the presentation, as well as an additional set of resources focusing on caregiver legal resources out to you to the email that you used to register for the webinar. And there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. I want to really emphasize for anybody on the call to be entering your questions into that Q&A section as we're talking. And Monica, feel free. I don't know if you could see the Q&A, but feel free to either write down or we'll get to these questions after the panel discussion. So with that, I was curious if somebody in the panel would like to get started and just kind of give your general feedback or response to Monica's presentation.
Thank you so much, Monica. It was really informative. In terms of general feedback and thoughts, I have to say it was hard for me to not get emotional and like kind of well up. We, as a kind of a group, in talking about this previously, we were talking about just having estate planning in general and like legal documents. And I think when you're diagnosed, there's such this immense fight or flight reaction that happens, and you instantly kick into survival mode. And I couldn't help but also feel at the same kind of breath, like selfish. I was like, oh. So for all of those listening, my husband and I do not have any of these documents in place. And this was a giant wake-up call, if only for us to really be able to say, yeah, no, this is time for us to do this. But also, I think within the same regard, it was really hard when we were diagnosed because we were just so focused on the next day or hour by hour. And so we weren't necessarily focused on the future, even though I did have a relatively good prognosis. I'm in remission now, and we still haven't necessarily prioritized that. And so I think to hear all of these amazing resources that are available, if for those of my family and friends that are listening on this call, I mean, I think this is our wake-up call to do it. But also in the same regard, I, as a cancer patient, don't have it. And I think that was really difficult for me to listen and not get emotional to this, because you're right, Monica. I think we don't want to focus on the death aspect of it, even though, as my therapist said to me, we are all dying. But that was a really hard thing for me to accept. And I still haven't accepted it, and I'm still working on that every day. So I think initial thought is my husband and I need to do it, but also kind of giving ourselves a little bit of grace in this as well.
I'll say we have little things in place, but not on, like, we need a will. We know, we talk about it all the time. We got very fortunate that our house got placed in a trust, that we have people that do, like my sister who kind of talks to us through, who's done the trust thing, and we can bounce ideas or what we put into trust or what we don't. But those things are something, or we'll have a power of attorney on certain things. But it's overwhelming. It gets overwhelming because it's this list of items, and you're like, I got to do this and this and this. And then it's like, what's the easiest to do, or what's falling into my lap at this time? And that's what we're going to fill out today.
Kyle, I saw you about to unmute as well. Oh, there's a technical glitch. Did you unmute, Kristin?
No, we don't have anything else to say. I was
Oh,
just leaving room for Kyle.
yeah.
Can you
Oh,
not
there you
hear
go.
us?
No, now you're good.
No, we hear you now.
Okay. I was just saying, I'm going to piggyback off of you, Kristen, because Eddie and I didn't do any planning. When I went in for my 9.5 to 10.5 hour surgery, they asked me to sign some forms, and they asked me where my, I forget what they call it, advanced directive. They asked me where my advanced directive is. And I said I don't want to sign it. I also went into my surgery with bullhorns, and I wasn't going to take any prisoners, right? So I was just going to bulldoze right through it. After hearing everything that you just said, it's like Eddie and I were on mute, and we had this side conversation. Like, kind of sucks being an adult, right? Like, we have to do the adult thing and do this. Um, my last surgery was in October 20th of this year, last month, and or 2 months ago now, I guess. And no, last month. Duh, I'm crazy, sorry. And as I went into it, this was the surgery. Believe it or not, my big surgery didn't was a wash at this point, but this surgery, I got nervous before because my tumor was on my main artery. And I called my best friend, who's a physician's assistant, and I said, listen, this is my password to basically all my finances. If something were to happen to me, and she's like, nothing's going to happen to you. And then she's like, are you crazy? You don't have an advanced directive. She's like, you're a day out from your surgery. Um, and Eddie, I told Eddie, I'm not going to tell you what I did, but something's been done just in case something happens to me on the table. And that's not the way it should be. And I'm sure I see Monica nodding her head. But like Mary said, like Kristen said, we have been given so much information. I have things going into my body that take 5 degrees to even understand what they are. Um, And the last thing I ever want to do is put Eddie on the hook financially. I mean, last year alone, I was at $3.9 million in medical bills, that luckily my insurance took care of. This year, I'm already at $975,000. Should anything happen, if he wasn't able, like, that would wipe anybody out. Like, that's a big number. Like, I wish I had that number to put into a house, but I don't. It's into my body. I guess this is my house. But thank you, Monica. Thank you very much for opening my eyes as someone with stage 4. It really resonated with me.
And it's good to thank you, Kyle. I'm curious, like Mary, you mentioned briefly as a caregiver, but Jan, as a caregiver and as a nurse, a retired nurse, case manager, how is it different when it's you being the caregiver versus when you're talking to other people?
Oh, I mean, being a caregiver for my daughter versus
Hmm.
being a patient. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hugely different just because one, I'm a mother and it's my family, and I was crushed most of the time. But as a caregiver, I think as Eddie alluded to too, you want to be strong. You don't want to show your tears and in front of her. So I was very fortunate that with the roles that I've had, my friends were social workers and nurses and physician's assistants, and I could call them and just cry. And they knew how to do that compassionate care where they didn't have to do anything but just listen. So it was very, very different being a caregiver to my daughter and being a caregiver to patients that I've had hundreds of them. Um, but I think that um, what this helped me do is help me understand in my heart was the importance of communicating, collaborating, and being compassionate. It's hugely important. And that's why when somebody does ask you at the hospital when you come in for a surgery, would you like to fill out an advance directive? Being a nurse, I'm saying yes. I think it's a really good idea to do that because it does make it does help to actually put yourself at rest. I mean, it took my husband and I quite a long time to set up a power of attorney and a trust, but after it was done, you feel so much better knowing that what you have and what you want are right down sitting down on paper. And I it's not like I could have that conversation with Kristin because I too was like, she has cancer, but oh, she'll be okay. And
We
we don't
didn't
have to.
have that at all.
No, we didn't have that conversation, and I wish I would have. And it makes me think that's where I did fail as a caregiver. No, I mean, I didn't fail, but it now reminds me of anyone else that I'm talking to now is to actually have that conversation and bring that up because I think it helps. I think it helps too when you're going through it and you're a cancer patient. It helps to put some of that stuff that you're feeling in your chest, in your heart, on paper, so it's outside of this place that's so cavernous right now, filled with information. It's one thing that you can put down here and it's set in a place where you can end it and move on. So anyway, that's
Mm.
my feeling.
I saw there, but I feel like I this sounds weird, but I feel like I'm the patient. I don't know if Eddie feels kind of the same. It's like we're living it like I I'm almost him. Like his diagnosis is me and I'm him as well. So it's just you're when you're in it, you're in it. So and it's just kind of I don't know.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wish I could take away from Eddie is the fact that he's had to take on my identity as cancer, right? Um, and when we were just on mute this last time, he was like, one of the things that you did do is that you didn't accept it. You didn't accept the fact that you had cancer. And that was my truth, right? That's not anybody else's truth but my own. And that's how I fought through this. And it's not been fair, right? Like I never, Eddie and I did go to therapy separately, right? To talk about this, but did we ever talk about advanced planning? Absolutely not. Like that was never a conversation that happened with two different psychiatrists, right? And he just was asking me, he's like, why didn't we do anything? Why didn't we think about that? And I was like, one, stage 4. I was told I had a few months to live to a year, and that should have been the first quick kick in the butt to get yourself in gear to do that. Kind of wish this was taught in school, right? Like, wouldn't this have been great if this was taught in grammar school instead of some of the other stuff that we had to listen to? I don't know. Death is happening, right? And I always would say to Eddie, I have just as much chance of getting. We just moved out of Miami, Florida, and if anybody's been there, it's chaotic with the traffic. And I've said, anybody could walk across the street and get hit by a car, right? Or I have to go to the University of Miami, which I understand there's University of Miami people on this call, so thumbs up to UM. But that's just the nature of the game, and it's the way the life that I hate to be so crass with it, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, and I need to be more proactive. We need to be more proactive.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have to we discussed this before, and we have to definitely normalize death. As horrible as it sounds, we have to normalize it. And the thing is, we feel sometimes, and I told her, like, I felt sometimes guilty because I wanted to speak about it. And then at the end, it's like I have to have a little grace and say, hey, this is how I feel. If you die, part of me is gonna die with you. But we have to figure this out. We have to make decisions. And it took this long for us to actually have this like conversation in call. And I feel that I want to help also other people that are starting to go through this and say, it's all right to be scared. It's all right to not know what you're gonna do, and it's all right to tell your person that you're taking care of, you might die, I might stay, and I have to figure it out. If you love me and I love you, we have to talk about these things. So it's really important that people learn and people is able to have these conversations.
It sucks, but the conversation has to
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is like you're just taking away that taboo and something that even as a younger individual, hearing that, hearing about like death and that would be, it could be a potential moment. I think also too, what I'm hearing from the situation is that when you're diagnosed, every single decision that you have to make as a cancer patient feels like if you make the wrong decision, that would result in death. And I think, when you were diagnosed, for me in particular, it was, okay, so these are your options like radiation. Which ones do like kind of like a speedboat salesman and kind of thinking like, which option do you want? And this is the one that you should go with. And this is the one that works for you and your family based on your commuting and then surgery. And then, so every decision feels like if you make the wrong one, and that's something that I really had to deal with as a cancer patient is how do we rectify and trying to make that decision that feels right. And I do feel like for those of us that are on this call, like to hear like this could actually maybe feel like the right decision that's not going to necessarily result in death, but maybe just a little bit of happiness. And
Yeah.
from the perspective of that, like my mom said, it's actually taken care of. And I think that for a lot of those decisions that we had to make, I still feel like that. If, I just graduated from 3 months to 6 month scans, and it does not feel like the right choice. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like that is going to result in life if we miss something. And I know I just have to put my trust in my care team in order for that to happen. But I think to your point, Eddie, is like we do have to give ourselves a little bit of grace because every decision at that time and now just feels like it's the most important decision and like our life depends on it.
Yeah, one of the things that I did in our family is that it's because I take the Natera test, the Signatera test, I kind of let that be my kind of my crutch because I was like, oh, the scans are to talk to you about your point, Kristen, about the scans. I was like, I at least have this sign like somebody knows what's going on in my biomarkers. And I honestly would let that be the security blanket with Eddy. I'd be like, don't worry, my Signatera is going down. But when it skyrocketed and I went back into reoccurrence, um, it was a scary time because the scans couldn't find the tumor. And it finally, the last PET scan that I had, it lit up my tumor on my artery in my liver. And but I just had to just say, like, the security blanket needs to be ripped off, and it really needs to be, estate planning and understanding the conversation and being comfortable with the conversation and normalizing it, like you said, Kristen. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
How do you think
No.
caregivers can help with trying to allay some of those fears? I don't want to be Pollyannish and say, oh, everything's going to be okay. And I went to every appointment just so I could push hard on the physician going, so tell me exactly how you did surgery and tell me exactly how you took it over to histology and tell me exactly, is that going to help me? Not really, but how can a caregiver help to try and allay some of those fears? I mean, does it just help to listen, or is it better to kind of say, so far everything is going okay? And let's just go with that for right now. I mean, you don't want to put it off, but what would be a best thing for you guys to hear things?
Jan, for me personally, Jan, what you're saying is a teeter-totter because like I wanted to do it all myself because I couldn't burden Eddie anymore or my mom or my family. I kind of went rogue and just did it. And then he would get upset and he would want to know what's going on, especially my mom. And I know she's on this call. She would ask me a million questions, and I'm just like, can I just do it myself, please? Can I get this done? Like,
I said
and
that to
that's
you
not
too.
fair to my caregiver,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
I see you nodding your head, John, as
And
well.
I think that there's just no right answer, and that's the bubble of caregiving. It's my gosh, is it stressful? I mean, cancer is stressful, but caregiving is stressful. I think caregiver goes to the next level. I wish that there was something better, a better answer.
Yeah, I actually had I have somebody that I know from work, and this guy like he went through a very hard diagnosis, and the doctor told him like, oh, go home and enjoy your son, like you have few months, and he's like, I have a 7 years old, I'm not dying, and he's been clear for 5 years now, and he could be my dad. And when Cal got diagnosed, I have so many questions, but I didn't know anybody that I could ask these questions. And like luckily, when literally like a week after Cal got diagnosed, I had to go and work with this guy, and I was like, we need to talk. Like, I need to ask you questions. And then he said, look, I'm one of the I'm one of those people that you don't read in Google. So number one, don't read in Google. Don't look for anything. Like,
Right.
you just have to be there for him. And please, please, please get therapy. Like he said that after 5 years, he said, I'm cool. My wife's still going hard on therapy after my treatment. Like her damage was much bigger than my damage because I was on it. I was the one feeling I might die. I might not die. My wife was the one that had to figure out what was the right thing to do. What if I wouldn't wake up sometimes? Like how many things she has to do? Who do I call? Who do I ask these questions? So to your point, it's like it's very important that we discuss these things and I don't know, like set a point to start with when somebody get diagnosed.
I think before I liked what Monica said earlier. When you're 18,
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess so many thoughts, and it's getting me emotional, and it's hard. But Mary and John, there's a question in the chat that I think is kind of correlated. It's for other couples facing military-related injuries and ongoing issues, like you mentioned. What's helped you protect your relationship while managing the day-to-day medical demands?
Oh, wow.
What's helped? So, like, I feel like everyone's going to be really different. Like, for what's helped us is, I think, holding each other accountable and making sure that we're just honest with each other. There's going to be so many unclear things. Right now, we're going through diagnosis after diagnosis of no, maybe you're fine. Yes, you're good. No, you're not good. No, we need to biopsy this. Now we need to find out this. And you have to go through when it comes to military related issues, like, hey, we need a procedure done. We need to wait for TRICARE. We need to wait for this. We need to do community health. We need to wait for, and you're just like, I need a diagnosis and I need this biopsy done. And what am I doing? So for us, I feel like we just have to unite sometimes. Of I have to hold him accountable, and he has to hold me accountable. Is like kind of what Kyle said. Like John told me yesterday, you know what? You could walk down the street tomorrow and get hit by a car. And I'm like, I could. He's like, and this could come back as I have cancer. It could. So it's just kind of for us, it's just making sure that we're on the same page and we're holding each other accountable, but also we're helping each other. So
Yeah.
as a caregiver standstill, John's always like, where's your mental health right now? Do you need to go and have a Sunday by yourself? Get a massage and do something. So, and for the same for him, I do. Do you need time by yourself? Do you need to work on your mental being? Do you need time away?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just very thankful for her. I've been dealing with at least my combat related PTSD since around I got out in 2009, and it didn't really hit till around 2010 or so, and I've been dealing with it ever since. And at 38, I really got serious with my mental health, and I feel like I've been doing so good. And just Friday, I got the call saying that they did find something, and I got to now wait for December 15th to get a procedure done to confirm whether it is or not cancer. So my mind's been everywhere since Friday. I don't know what to think, what to do. Um, but yeah, I'm just thankful for Mary, pretty much. Because yeah, this is hard, and like the combat PTSD related part is already super hard. But I feel like I feel like I won on that part. Like from 38 to I'm now 41. Um, I feel like I'm out of that hole that I used to feel like I lived in, and I see the light. And now, like since Friday, I feel like all my PTSD issues took the back seat, and now I'm dealing with this. So yeah, the caregiver part, I'm so thankful for my wife, Mary, obviously, and I do wish her the best mental health state of mind or whatever it is, because it's hard. It's like I said, it's very overwhelming, and now having to deal with this. And I'm glad that all of you guys are better now. And yeah, so I rely a lot on Mary, unfortunately.
I do a lot. I'm like a jack of all trades, full-time worker, full-time caregiver, full-time mother. But sometimes you have to, and it's the life of a caregiver. It's just you have something in everyone's relationship's going to be a little bit different, and everyone's going to take on. And this is why I say, like, sometimes I feel like I am the patient. I have to step up and make decisions of, is this the right medication to take? Will this take a little bit more? So, but we also have to take time for ourselves to make sure that we are connected. We have our movie nights, we have our game nights, we have our family nights, we have our alone time and things like that, just to make sure that we're staying connected. Because unfortunately, we have family that don't live. We're in Texas. My family's in New York. His family's in California. And we rely heavily on our military family. I call them my sisters and whatnot. Without them, we'd be lost.
Yeah.
So
And of course, all the resources that we have.
yeah.
A lot of military resources out there that help veterans. So yeah,
Well, John, I think you're a rock star.
Yeah.
thank you.
If and you know what? If whatever they find is whatever it could be, you know, you've gone through a lot, and it's just going to be one more notch on your belt, unfortunately. And I really, like, my thoughts and prayers are with you, brother, because that's you've gone through enough, and you just got to keep fighting. And I know that that's not the right words to say, because I got tired of people telling me to fight. But I really hope and pray for the best for you. And
Thank you.
you know, I was told I had 6 months to live, and I found out today off of a phone call that I am no evidence of disease in my body. So that's
Yay.
it's
That's awesome.
it's something that can be overcome, right?
Yes.
And I have chills saying it, but it's each of us go through so much when we get diagnosed, or in your case, John, unfortunately blown up, eh, just, I don't know. Kristin, you said something amazing at the start of this call, grace. And if you can just grab onto that, it's a tiny word that it holds so much weight.
Yeah,
Agreed.
for sure.
I think it's also giving ourselves grace. I went into this call wanting to not be in that position where I was not good enough and needing more. And then the first thing that my thought was, and genuinely, Monica, everything you have said has been very helpful. But my first thought was, oh my gosh, I didn't do this. I could do more. And so I think within that same notion, it's kind of giving ourselves some grace is that, we are doing enough right now and we are good enough. And everything that we are able to contribute to, whether it be with our caregiver or caregivers in my case, and I think all of us kind of rely on that village. It is having a little bit room for that grace, and we are doing enough. It's just now kind of tightening things up a little bit. So that's not good enough. I think we are enough, and I think we are doing good enough.
I know, Monica.
I will just remind you that 75% of Americans don't have a will in place. So you
So
are
I am the majority.
certainly not alone. You're not alone by any means. And I can't even remember who said it. I think it maybe was Kyle about it should be taught in high school. We say it all the time. Like understanding health insurance, finances, and estate planning should all be taught in high school so that these decisions and these conversations can be had when you're not in a moment of crisis.
Yes.
Because then it makes the hard that much harder.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I would just say to people who got good news recently and who are pushing their scans out further, which is also good news medically speaking, right? Maybe now is the time to be thinking about it. To Mary and John, maybe now's not the time to be thinking about it, right? None of this is one size fits all.
I always like to say though, like, and you probably agree, you'll probably like, don't say that. But like, I feel like as long as you're having the conversation, these are conversations that we have all the time of what happens if something happens to us. Okay, this person's getting the kids until this person can arrive and this is happening, or what happens if you get sick? What do you want? Like, we might not have it down on paper. He's told me, like, your family can have input if you get sick, but I'm the final say. And I said, your family can't, hopefully they're not on the call, can't have any input. But like, and my family will probably have the input on for you because I will need someone, but we might not have everything written in paper, but as long as you're having the conversation, I feel like as long as your partner knows and they can see that stands, and that's what I kind of tell myself when every time I'm like, I'm giving myself grace today. I don't have that in order.
You've done the hard parts. You've done the hard parts. The next piece is actually, though the lawyer in me says important, because think about how those family members are going to react when they show up. Having it in writing is helpful for everybody.
And protection.
But pat yourself on the back that you've done the work.
Yeah.
I think what resonates is that like everybody's human, and that you wish there was like a more social or cultural norm to talk about this stuff in general and to be open about it, but there's just not, and you don't want to think about the worst case scenario, and I think the point is like bringing up the conversation now, and hopefully whether there's people on this call that should be doing these things. I mean, yourselves as panelists, like this is bringing up topics that you're realizing you should do, and more of those touch points to put that into your heads, like that it's worth prioritizing, it's worth putting past the awkwardness and the uncomfortability of it to take those steps. And I don't know if there's things like, is it better if you play the game as if it was like a board game, or is it like think about it like in a third person to be like, oh, if there were two people in this exact situation that were going through this, like what would you tell them to do? And if you keep talking about it theoretically, does that make it better? I don't know. And there's no playbook for your particular situation. There's a playbook in general, but that doesn't line up perfectly to your playbook or your life. And I don't know.
David, can I ask
Please.
my mom a question that came up because I saw it and I was just as intrigued by it, just from like a planning purpose, but regarding the checklist, let me go back to that one right here real quick. Oh, from your experience, what systems or checklists would you recommend caregivers set up early on so they are not carrying everything in their heads? I want to be able to take what you're saying and like apply it to what Troy has to go through on a daily basis and like what other spouses have to go through too. So like what, from like your nurse case manager perspective, what would you say to that? Just for curiosity.
Well, I guess I go to, I mean, I'm fortunate that I had the background that I did, and it started with home care experience where I walked into somebody's home and I was fumbling and mumbling. I didn't know really what I was doing in somebody else's home. And it was coming to the person where they are. And I was able to go, I have to do a head to toe assessment. So, can this person think around their house? Can they figure out how to call for help? Can they move around their house safely? Can they get in and out of a bathtub? Can they get on and off the toilet? So
Independent.
and how can we bring them to living their life the fullest as they can, but just trying to not make it overbearing, but just try and make it safe and that they can lead an independent life. So it is kind of doing a internal checklist, and I did for many years have it written down, and I would have a checklist for every individual, and then it just became so much a matter of who I am and what kind of job I was doing. I was able to not always write it down on a checklist, but there are wonderful, I think it's called like occupational therapists have a really good checklist. And I think if you're ever in a clinic or if you're ever in a place after any kind of procedure and you're not moving around well, sometimes it's asked to talk to a case manager to come in. They can order a home safety valve for someone to go through and kind of see how well you are moving if you need to use something at home. You can ask for having some home health if you're having some dressing changes that are complicated and you really don't know how to handle it or you're too scared. And I think it's what's most important to me as a caregiver is that whatever you're hearing from what a physician, a nurse, or anybody is telling you, if you don't understand what they're saying, you stop them right there and say, I don't understand what you're saying. Please review this again with me. This does not make sense to me. I really need to have a much clearer understanding of what's going on. And if you have to do any kind of training for any kind of procedures or any kind of dressing care, I think it's important that you do it in front of somebody and they watch what you're doing so that you don't go home and you're like, wow, what happened? What what did they say to us? It's so important when you leave those rooms to know what's going on. So, did I have a checklist? No, but there is, I think there's one called Oasis or something that you can kind of go through the checklist. Um, and I was able to to with going into my daughter's home, I could see what needs to get done. I knew she had two dogs, and I knew I need to get a walker
Toddler.
and a toddler so that she was walking with the walker so the dogs wouldn't run into her and knock her down and break her incision open. So I kind of looked at that, but somebody had to pick the baby up from daycare. So I kind of made a list that way, but we had really a lot of good people that were helping. Somebody set up a meal train. I had a friend that said, "What can I do?" And I'm like, I don't know how to cook for all this. And she goes, "I'm setting up a meal train." So
Yeah.
I was very grateful, but I don't know if that answered anything, but I it's important to know what you don't know and ask what you don't. If you don't understand it, ask about it. It's really important.
Say that all the time. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
you make really good point, but also to add on of like, at least for our situation, it might be a little different, but I think it really is it hands in hand of you're thinking about the scenario right there and then, but also a little bit long term as well. Like, what's the later effect? So after you recover, what mobility stuff are you going to need? Because it's gonna change. You can go from being in a wheelchair to a walker to crutches to this, and
Mm-hmm.
getting that established of like what is the difference so you don't have to, on a caregiver's perspective of thinking of it like that, not so much the patient because that can get very overwhelming, but like what are the next ones so you're not scrambling when they come up. So
Right.
we're looking at the best. Like we've gone through multiple wheelchairs, even like the peg, we call it a peg leg, but like you put your knee on it, things like that of like, this seems like won't really work, but actually ends up being the best ones and just kind of having them. And you can get them at your local community store, like just calling your local community center and being like, do you have any extra wheelchairs or like crutches or just materials that you need and swapping them out, but knowing those things are there is also good to
Right.
remember for long term.
Right. And having, I mean, I think some the resources that are available at most hospitals and clinics are having those physical therapists and occupational therapists, and they can do home safety evals to kind of tuck at things that you don't really normally think of. And I find them invaluable, actually.
Also, if you're thinking about like, sometimes you might need beds, like you might need a hospital bed. And
Right.
start thinking about it now. You can get your authorizations approved, your DMEs, your everything that you need. So that way you're not worrying about it a little bit later. And it sucks to think about like I might need a bed or I might need this, but you're better off having it now rather than later, or because you don't always have to pick it up. As long as you have everything set up, if you don't need it, you don't need it. But at least if you do, it's there.
Right. And that's another good point is, I mean, and I think if you're in the hospital or you're at a clinic and you're having some issues, I mean, I relied a lot on, I would ask for a social worker case manager or a nurse case manager. It's my bias, but I think they can really be helpful in helping you plan for what you need when you're ready to go home. And they are your really strong advocate. And that's what I prided myself on is just being a really strong advocate. I taught Kristin and to how to be that. You got to be your own best advocate. You got to ask the questions. And if you're not getting good answers, talk to the manager. You know, I mean, you just do have to push a little bit because you do get thrown into these situations where all this information is coming at you and you just need to have somebody else, a different pair of ears that isn't hearing it emotionally to help you wade through it.
Yeah.
No, we don't have a lot of time left. I'm curious because you've all have said that there's maybe something that was talked about by Monica that you haven't done yet. I'm questioning whether to ask if you all have any ideas of how, like moving forward after today, any ideas on an approach on how you might get yourself to do something that you haven't done. Like how could it be different going forward than going backwards
I
than when
mean,
before?
you just have to start. Like you said at the end of this call, you're gonna send out the resources so we all have it. That way people aren't taking notes, but you have to start. That's it. Plain and simple.
The one thing that my husband and I have started that I actually saw as a huge win for us was, and you can just get it off of Amazon. It's like, I think it was like $15, but it was like a portfolio for the family. And I think from like our perspective, like that was just like a really simple place to start with this process is what, and in doing so, we realized like that we had been through so much trauma in the last 3 years that we didn't even know where our daughter's security card was. And I say that just from the perspective of the grace, but also I think to say that, you know, it's kind of collecting the things that we need to even have that conversation. Like you were saying, Monica, like 401k. I've switched jobs, you know, I have a pile of 401k bills that I want to be able, or not bills, but assessments that I want to be able to like put into like some type of plan. And so I think it's just starting to collect those documents. And then I actually am going to force my husband and I to sit down and go through Monica's resources that she sent out, or that David will send out, because I think, you know, as Kyle was saying, like some of us don't even know where to start and it's overwhelming. And so I think for us is we're just kind of starting with kind of collecting the documents that you might need and now thinking about it from on the other side of things. And then hopefully that'll help us kind of get in the right direction. I think for us too, and I know my husband's listening on this call, you know, I think sorry, we think about our daughter and sorry, and so I think, you know, we think about like who do we want to care for her if something should happen to us, and I think that like she is the love of our life, and so I think prioritizing, you know, Mary and John, you had talked about like your kids and kind of thinking about like that was one of your main priorities. I know Monica, you said that as well, so I think starting with that potential, and going from there. It's so funny when my mom and I were preparing for this, I was like, Mom, you can't cry. You got to hold it together. And here I am, the project manager, breaking down at the end. But I do think that there's just something to be said in thinking about, you know, what you said, Monica, is that not everything is money and not everything is cash, and thinking about that sentimental first and then collecting those documents.
For us, I think we just need to not be lazy and call our lawyer. We have a trust. We need to just finish the rest, stop having the conversations and put it down. But it's that if we put it down, it makes it real. It makes it legit. So
Maybe even just starting with an advance directive, because for both of you to kind of say, if something does happen, this is what I would want, or what is more importantly, what you don't want. I don't think you have to even you don't have to write down what you want. I want to, you can just say, this is what I don't want. I don't want to live in pain, So, and you can easily write that in advance directive, and your agent will be able to respond to that. Monica, you said you really hit the nail on the head a lot for the amount of people that don't have advance directives, and it does make it easier in your heart when you have one. So, because you know that no matter who it is, it could be me or it could be her, it's somebody knows what I don't want, and that's important to me.
Mm.
So start there.
It's an
I
interesting
heard
perspective. Oh, sorry, Gajan, go, please.
I heard this thing a while ago, and it's been in my head for a while now, but it was something almost like you train for death so that when death comes, it's not as. But I know we don't do that well in this country, and we try to avoid it. But it's just been in my head for a while, and the last few days I've been thinking about it a lot. But it's almost like, yeah, you find a way to train or prepare yourself for it, and I don't know, I guess my mind's going crazy right now.
if it doesn't happen, it
Rightfully
doesn't
I'm
so,
just
John.
going through all
Rightfully
this
so.
stuff, but it's almost like that. Like you do have to do these things and do them because yeah, like 2 months ago I was fine, and who knows what will happen in the future. You get what I'm saying? So
It's an interesting perspective that was mentioned to do it for your caregiver. Like if you ask all the questions, Monica's point about, doing something before a diagnosis or before something happens, if you think about it about your caregiver, maybe that will help to both of you to do it for each other at the same time. And I want to give you all a chance, any final thoughts, because we have to unfortunately wrap up. But we have a lot of questions. I'm just going to say that if you all panelists are open to staying on for a few minutes, we'll kind of go through the questions and try to get things answered in the email that we send out afterwards, because we don't have time now.
I thought
But yeah,
it in. Sorry.
I know. I don't. We'll figure out how to get answers to the questions that people are putting out there, and also hopefully having another one of these sessions. Yeah, I want you all to kind of have a last chance to have a last kind of comment.
I would like to say that the crimson cord that has been through all of our conversations is grace, and I'm just going to leave with that.
Yeah. It takes a village is super is super cliche. And I think when someone told me that in the beginning, like I said in the beginning, I kind of poo-pooed it and said, okay, please, I got this. And I think it's okay, and for all of us, both patients and caregivers, to look at a situation and say, I don't have this, or I need some help. I think that's another thing that I was hearing a lot from this as well, is to not, if you don't feel comfortable with an answer, whether you're the patient or you're the caregiver, it's okay to continue to ask questions so that you feel comfortable and you can advocate for yourself, advocate for not only yourself, but for your caregiver. And I think that that's super important as well. And I think that, what I'm also hearing that I want to be able to explore just as a patient is that, again, I relied really heavily on family and friends for that strong infrastructure around us. And what I was even learning and talking to these wonderful panelists is that there are so many other ways in which we could build up that village. Like there is those nonprofits, those advocacy groups. And David, if you could even try to include some of those in the resources, I would be internally grateful for that as well, because I think that that's just another way in which we as patients, but then again, advocating on behalf of our caregivers, can continue to build up that village. It's not linear, is what I'm learning as well, and that we are going to continue to put people into our arsenal, whether it's tests too. So Kyle, like you're talking about, like your Signatera test and biomarkers. I think as a genetic counselor, that makes my eyes dazzle. But I also want to be able to think about it is like, how are we taking information in, whether it's with an advocacy group or a biomarker information, how can we build up that village a little bit more? So thank you so much for having us on, David. It's just been a pleasure from our
Yeah,
perspective.
shout out to all of you. It's really been wonderful. So thank you for sharing your stories. It's beautiful.
I don't know if that's a good heart, but there's my
I don't
heart.
know.
It's a lovely
Right.
But John and Mary, you weren't able to do
Yeah.
your last thoughts too.
I want for all the caregivers out there to know that you're not alone. Don't be afraid to speak up. I think that that was something for me. It took me probably 6 years to speak to another caregiver and actually say what it was like living day in and day out. And then all of a sudden they were like, I live the same life as you. And for me, that was just like, oh my God, really? So I'm not alone in this? And you're so afraid to talk about it or say what's happening or say your fears and do all this because we don't know. But there are other caregivers, whether it's cancer or injury or anything, that we're all living in the same boat. And hearing Kyle's and Eddie's stories, like and Jan and Kristen's, it's like I know that we're like injury with other medical issues, but it's like, yeah, we're the same things happening and it's crazy. So for all the caregivers, don't be afraid to talk about it
Yep.
and find people that you can connect with just to kind of to bounce and talk of things. You're going to learn a lot from each other.
Yep. Put your hand over your heart.
Mm.
Give yourself some compassion.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanna tell other caregivers that it's all right to have fear. It's all right to have questions, and it's all right to feel that you're having it too. And it's also something that Cal tells me all the time. I always feel that I haven't done enough. We are all doing enough, and we have to stop feeling guilty when things doesn't go the way that we want to. And it's all right, we just have to give us a little grace and just be there, keep it strong, and like support each other, because we're doing enough. And we're just
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, I don't want to get emotional, like,
You're
but
You're
thank
good,
you
Eddie.
guys.
It's almost
You're
like we have to
good.
normalize our humanity. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay to be human.
Yeah, it's okay to cry
Everybody
sometimes
is just
about
as
it.
lost
Yeah.
as we are.
That is a great way to cap this off, and I definitely can't think of anything better. Um, so I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you to Natera for sponsoring this opportunity. I hate to be the person to say we have to stop, but trying to be cognizant of people's time. Better maybe to say like to be continued. Um, Thank you all, and yeah, that's it. That's all I got. I hope you all have a good rest of your night, and we'll send you the recording and more info soon.
Thanks all.
Wishing
Bye.
you all the best.
Bye guys, nice to meet you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Are we staying
Are we staying on?
to answer questions or not?
I was gonna say if you're open to, but we'll